Entering the Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by DraftKings 2022 MLB season preview, starting with the American League as we go division by division, trying to find the best odds at DraftKings Sportsbook that you can win some money on. If you're going to wrap your money on some futures for the season, you better make sure that there's some winners. So hopefully I brought in the right people, because obviously you don't want to listen to me on this stuff. But what I do need you to do is smash the like button for the episode in the comment section. Give me your favorite over-under win total for any team in the American League this year, and subscribe to Mayo Media Network. If you're a good person, you can also rate and review the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast. That would be thrilling for me. So thank you very much in advance for doing that. If not, you're a bad person. You don't want to be a bad person. No, do you? Leave the review. Thanks. We got tons of content coming out for you. We'll do the National League at some point, full Masters breakdown. We got schedule breakdowns, free agency breakdowns already up on Mayo Media Network as well for the NFL. So tons going on out in the sporting world right now. Let's bring them in. The guys that I brought in to talk about baseball, to tell me who to bet on. First up, from FTN Daily.com, FTNBets.com, FTNFantasy.com, and the host of Mean Streets, my friend, your friend, you know him well, Chris Meaney. What's up?
What's up, Pat? Always a pleasure, man, to chop it up with you. I love the studio, looking fantastic there, and it didn't seem like we were going to get baseball. I thought maybe we would get a huge delay, but we're here. We're just a couple weeks away from the season starting, so I'm happy to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
And the host of Fantasy Baseball Picks and Bets on the Mayo Media Network. If you have not searched out that show yet, hit the playlist. There's like 40 videos up there, short form, to get you prepared from the year. You can follow him at MLB Moving Averages on the Twitter box, at theathletic.com for his baseball writing. John Laghezza, what is up, my man? Big John.
Man, Pat, I'm so flattered. Chris is right. The studio looks mint, man. Congratulations. And thank you very much for the opportunity. It's been really great. And yes, everyone, check out Cork Stats on the Mayo Media Network twice a week. We were throughout the lockout. I was a little more optimistic than Chris. It was a little bit of a wilder ride than maybe I expected, but I was saying 162 on time. I rode that tiger, and we were preparing the entire time. Check out the playlist. We're covering it all, man. Thanks for having me, Patty.
All right, John, you were talking about this before the show, so I think we should just start with it, that you see potential inefficiency with some of these to make the playoff odds now that there's more playoff teams.
Yeah, well, right off the bat, what's the first thing we always want to do is read the rules. And baseball has had some changing rules, which, right, let's start at the very beginning, everybody. So the playoff format has been expanded. So that's something I'm not even sure everyone is fully aware of yet. So we're moving from 10 to 12, and I've got it right here. So there's going to be 6 playoff teams per league. I'm going to read it to you. I copy and paste it so I don't make any mistakes. Being precise is very important. So the 1 seed is the best overall record. The 2 seed is the second best record among division winners. The 3 seed, the third best division winner record. 4 to 6, 3 best records among non-division winners. The top 2 seeds get a bye. So I haven't really dug too far into it, but it kind of sounds to me like the NFL structure. But the thing that, one bet, if you want to dive right into it, guys, man, I'm really digging these Mariners. They're adding, which is always a very important thing when betting MLB futures. Chris and I often speak about this. We want to be getting behind teams that will be adding pieces and not selling off. We know the Mariners are adding. They just brought in last year's Cy Young. They pitch, they hit, they have rookies on deck. If Kelnick steps up, they have Julio Rodriguez on deck. I'm not sure whether they're plus money, guys. DraftKings hasn't posted at plus 165. I've already hit that, and that's just to make the playoffs.
Meanie, you're a fan of a team in the AL West. Are you scared of the Mariners or not so much?
Yeah, I am. It just, the Angels always seem to be that team that's just right there. And every year, this time of the year, somebody always just makes an excuse for them to finally get into the playoffs. Is this going to be the year Mike Trout? I mean, he's made the playoffs once. You got Shohei Ohtani. I don't know, Big John, we can talk about this. And Mayo, I mean, you can touch base on this too. I don't know if I've ever seen like AL MVP future odds where number 1 and number 2 are from one team and nobody is picking that team to make the playoffs. And I'd be shocked if they made it, right? I mean, Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani, these guys are AL MVPs, yet nobody's talking about the Angels to make the playoffs. Yeah, I'm on the Mariners. I like the upswing. They're a strange team over the past few years, right? They're a team that's made a lot of moves. They're not one of those teams that just sits back and let players walk, or they're active through free agency, more so through trades, and they've built through the draft, like Big John is saying. Kelnick in there, Rodriguez. So they have some players that are going to come up in the system. They get Robbie Ray, AL Cy Young winner. They were active, grabbing some veteran bats, not spectacular bats, but Eugenio Suarez, Jesse Walker, like these are guys that certainly can add some offensive firepower to the lineup. But you look at the AL West, I think you could just also say the A's just gave everything up, and now Texas, they were big spenders in the free agency market, so they can kind of flip-flop. Texas is going to hang around. The Mariners are on the upswing. The Angels are a team that just kind of hang around 500, and the Astros are still right there. So I do see value. I see what Big John is saying when it comes to Seattle. I think there's value there. I don't know if they're ready yet, but there's certainly value on their win total, and for them to potentially be, I don't know, the 6th seed to get into the postseason.
Yeah, that's what we're looking for, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's jump into the divisions. American League East, the Blue Jays are the favorite at plus 185 at DraftKings Sportsbook.com. And we got the Yankees at plus 195. The Rays 3-1, even with the Freddie Freeman signing, didn't push them anywhere near the top, although the Rays are going to be formidable because that happens every single year for some reason. The Red Sox 5.5-1 to win the AL East. 150-1 for the Orioles. That's a real long shot here. So you got 4 good teams and 1 absolute trash team in the American League East this year. Meaney, I'm going to start with you. How is it that the year that we move out of Toronto, the both of us, that they're actually good again?
I know, right? There was a moment when we were together, working together, hanging out, watching some baseball in the office where the Jays were okay, right? I mean, Batista and Edwin and Josh Donaldson. But yeah, I mean, they were never favored at that moment. They were a team that just squeaked into the playoffs, and they gave a lot of people, a fun ride, really, in Toronto with those battles against the Texas Rangers. But this is a team that's absolutely going to rake. Last year, they raked anyways, right? They were one of the better offensive teams in the league. I still would have liked to see them, maybe not so much Freddie Freeman. I would like to see a better left-handed bat inside this lineup, but they're still going to score a lot of runs. They're going to hit lefties really, really well. You're probably going to see, I don't know how much better Vlad can get, but considering what Vlad did last season, and Bo Bichette and, Teoscar Hernandez, adding Matt Chapman, who, I don't think he's a 210 hitter. But the big thing with Matt Chapman is he's a terrific fielder. He's a multiple Gold Glove winner. The hot corner is something that he's going to do command very well in Toronto, and he's going to add them some firepower, some offensive punch. And he's a guy that's hit 20-plus home runs in 3 of his last 4 years. So you like the offense. They're going to be one of the better offensive teams playing inside that division, playing inside that friendly ballpark, making trips to Fenway, Yankee Stadium. They're going to score runs. They may be the best. They may be the best offensive team in baseball. Like there's no question about that. It's the pitching too, right? Jose Barrios. They lose Robbie Ray, but they bring in Kevin Gossman. I don't know how much left Hyunjin Ryu has, but he's a third arm inside the rotation, not a 1. I believe this time last year they kind of viewed him as the 1 inside that rotation. Alek Manoah's got a lot of potential as well, and I'm not a big fan of Yusei Kikuchi, but guess what? He's the 5 there, Big John. So this is a Jays team that I think should be favored, but at the end of the day, I don't know. We'll get John's thoughts here, obviously. I do believe that this is the best division in baseball. It's certainly in the American League. It's the most competitive, so it's going to be a bloodbath.
Yeah, I agree there. And that's kind of my problem, why I have trouble backing the Blue Jays. But really the caveat is at this point of the season, something, again, you and I have spoke about in seasons past, Chris, that the market is going to move. These prices are going to always be, going through their natural progressions, the ebbs and flows, the peaks and valleys. So I generally don't bet on the favorite because let's say the Jays just come out cold. It's a ridiculously long season, and that odd could actually move in our direction. So that's usually how I attack favorites. And it's not that I disagree with you. They are excellent. I'm a tremendous Yankee fan, but I've got to be fair. That lineup is absurdly good. I think the bullpen might be the weakness. I think they need to add one more person behind Romano, who I thought is very good. I actually thought they were a candidate to bring in Jensen. Not that you needed him, but I think they need to bolster the bullpen because of the back end of the rotation. Ryu has shown some hiccups, and Kikuchi, I'm not sold on. Again, I don't think, you throw the baby out with the bathwater for the Blue Jays because it's a 5-starter, which is fair. But man, if we're going to pay favorite odds, I like to think about where that price might go in the future. So given the circumstances and the fact I think a lot of this is pretty even, I think there'll be quite a bit of self-immolation in the division itself. Blue Jays versus Yankees. We always bet. We think about the betting board. You're not going to get heavy favorites, and they just beat each other up. I would take the Rays and the money. That ballpark really suppresses offense. And the Rays pitch well on top of it. And we've seen that, Chris, with Willie Adames. We've seen it with Nelson Cruz. The Trop just eats up good hitters. And I think that is maybe the tipping point that gets me towards the Rays, just thinking they're on par with those other two teams, which makes the plus 300 the most tantalizing on the board. So if I was betting, I'd be going with the flat fish, I think.
So,
and Pat, rewind the tape from them right here on Mayo Media Network last year, dude. Sorry to jump in there, but this is exactly what Big John said last year when the Yankees were favored and the Jays were kind of on the upswing, and he talked up the Rays, and the Rays won 100 games and they won the division. They were bounced early, but there always seems to be value on this Tampa Bay team. And Pat, when you teed up the divisions here, or this division and the odds, I think you basically said that. The Rays are this team that just kind of seems to hang around. The betting market always jumps in on the Yankees. The Jays are going to be a hot team. Everybody's in on them for the future odds overall to win the World Series. I think maybe they have the third best odds. They're the second potentially last time I checked. But it is I know what John is saying, but also at the same time, as you see the World Series odds there, this is not a team that's going to sneak up on anybody. There's not a ton of value to jump on that right now. But if they do come out to a hot start, they could be minus favorites, before the end of the month. So there's a couple different ways to look at it. I'm in on I would like to get in on them now because I do believe that they are the team to beat in the division.
Well, John, not all the time do odds reflect actual probability of a lot of this stuff happening, right? So the Blue Jays have made some splashy moves. They're young. They're up and coming. They're a fun team to root for. And whether it's player props, whether it's fantasy baseball, people want Blue Jays on their team. And hitting is just more sexy than it is with pitching. So, yeah, I want a bunch of Blue Jays on my squad. They're going to have 5 guys that hit 40 home runs or something like that. The Yankees' value is just always going to be beat out because, especially with DraftKings Sportsbook, now legal in New York, that New Yorkers are going to bet on the Yankees. That's just how it's going to work. The people in New Jersey are going to do the same thing. No one wants to bet on the Rays, obviously. So are the Jays and Yankees overinflated versus their actual probability to win this division, where the Rays are just unsexy, they're unfun, and no one really wants to bet on them? That's why they're 3-1?
Well, I think there's a lot of good info right there. Yes to all the Rays stuff. The Rays carry a bad team bias. They don't have a very strong fan base, and that's reflected in the price. To the Toronto and Yankees, I would tend to side with what Chris was saying, and it's that given the firepower and that they really could rattle off 12 wins right out of the gate, you could see the Toronto price move to where I don't think if they'd ever be really a heavy favorite because of the Yankees, and we know what they can do in short sets. But that odd could move closer to even. So if you can get, a 60% move in your favor, then I could see where Chris is going of at least beginning a position on the Blue Jays. I would not bet on the Yankees. I'm the biggest Yankee fan you could possibly find. My blood, Pat, and my son's nursery are pinstriped. And I just don't put my money there. There's no value. That was a good pick by you. The Yankees are generally overinflated, and I don't even think it's necessarily a local thing, though I think there's an aspect of that. I don't hope this doesn't sound mean. It's a square thing. We've had novices enter the market with the legalization of sports betting, and new bettors, they bet big name teams and they bet the over, right? They don't bet the Rays and they don't bet the under. So that's really where the sharp money has leaned. So, in 6 million words or less, I think that's how I feel.
Well, I would like to get your thoughts, both of you guys, on the Red Sox, too. Like, Red Sox are a team that, the pitching is, if we're looking for value inside this division, Last year, they cruised past their win total. I think it was like 80 or something like that. They ended up with 92 wins, the same amount as the Yankees. The offense was great. They bring in Trevor Story. I know, Big John, you're a big Bobby Dahlback guy, right? I mean, he's already this spring hitting bombs again like he did last spring. Maybe you expect a little bit more. Jackie Bradley Jr. back with Boston, one of the best defensive fielders in the game. Clearly, the pitching is an issue, but this team should stack up with every other team in the American League when it comes to offense, right, John? Like plus 550. Do you have any interest at all, or maybe the over on potentially their win total here at 85.5? Like I think they can get back to flirting with 90 wins this year.
I think the Red Sox are a very interesting case, and they're probably a better example of what Pat was alluding to about taking like a probabilistic view. If you're taking a macro view at these things, 162 games, and again, Boston is an adder, right? They just brought in Trevor Story. They're not selling off. You could look at the Boston Red Sox as being on par with the Blue Jays and the Yankees and the Rays, and you could validate that. The Red Sox are going to even go into some of these ballparks and be, I don't know, plus 110 underdogs? Like, it's not a heavy underdog. It's basically a split. So if we look at it from a certain point of view, there is value with the Red Sox. As I begin to kind of move, right, the camera one, camera two, as we begin to break out the electron microscope, right, from telescope to microscope, that's where I begin to see more of the flaws in Boston. Chris, they have a very much, I hate to talk about that other sport, but they have a very much like an Peyton Manning, Indianapolis Colts feel. Like they're going to try and bludgeon their way through the regular season. I don't think they're going to have the pitching and the defense to get it done when it counts in short sets. Who's pitching for this team? Michael Wacha, are we really going to put that up against Alek Manoah and Vlad Guerrero Jr.? And that's why you see those odds. I think the Red Sox are closer to the Yankees, frankly.
Interesting.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm just trying to think through. You mentioned Trevor Story. They bring him in. Now, Meaney, I've been out of the fantasy baseball game for some time right now, but I do remember the first 2 years of Trevor Story, and it was like, hey, he's really good in Colorado and sucks everywhere else. Is that still the case, John?
Man, we really got to be careful with home and away splits. One, because of the stabilization points. Also, they're humans, and they just could play better at home. Then we've seen evidence of people leaving and playing really well, DJ LeMahieu and Matt Holliday. And then as we learn more about ball path and flight, we learned that the ball is what's affected in cores, and that's why we kind of see all these subsequent effects. So it's really the break of the ball and that adjustment that hurts a lot of these players at home so much. I've actually heard the argument, Pat, check this out. It might help him not having to constantly adjust to the change in ball flight.
Did you hear that from Sully, who lives outside of Fenway Park?
Well, he's a wicked Sox fan, but he definitely knows his stuff. No, but all kidding aside, we really have learned a bunch, and I know it's kind of nerdy, but I think it just may be a little more nuanced than like home good, road bad, home good.
I think it's warranted to bring up, though, Pat. Like, you're right, honestly. Like, if you want to look at the numbers, I mean, for his career, I got it right here. 303 at home, 241 on the road. Last year, 296. This is just batting average, 296 at home and 203 on the road. Like, the splits are absolutely for real. Like, but, again, in this lineup, protection all over the place, inside
Chris,
that division.
Can I chime in?
I
would say a lot of that, too, is environmental. The NL West is very spacious, right? Those are pitcher ballparks now going to Pinball Machine USA. I mean, everywhere. Even with the field adjustment in Camden, I think people are immediately going to see that ballpark still kind of plays up. It wasn't just that one spot. Yankee Stadium plays up. Fenway plays up. So we know the Trop really is a sinkhole for offense, but he will be moving to a pretty strong environmental upgrade if we're looking at context. So again, all of the stuff you're saying is valid. I don't think he'll be as good on the road as he was in cores, but I think it just may be a little overstated. He's a very good hitter.
Yeah, one thing I'll just add to that too, Pat, before you take back over here, is that we did see most recently Nolan Arenado, right? I mean, he moved from cores, and then there was that question, how would his bat play in St. Louis? And I mean, from an average standpoint, 255 is that's like basically career low for him, but he still hit 30 plus bombs. He still drove in 100 plus RBI. He was still very, very valuable. And from like a fantasy standpoint, he returned value because he wasn't going as early as years past at Coors, and he dropped a couple rounds, but he certainly was still very productive. And I think that's the same way for Trevor Story, especially for those playing in roto leagues. Don't ignore him just because he's now with the Red Sox and he's out of Coors. He's still going to contribute across the board, and he's going to chip in with probably 15 to 20 stolen bases, which is very valuable that we know because not a lot of people are stealing these days.
Well, we can talk about one of two things. Both seem like kind of a bummer to talk about. We can talk about the Orioles, or we can talk about vaccines, because the vaccine thing is real for the Blue Jays, isn't it?
I think it's real for the Yankees. Big John may want to touch on this, right? Anthony Rizzo.
Well, it's the same thing as anyone playing in Toronto, just there's regulations in between the border that if you're not vaccinated, then you can't get in. You're not playing.
Yeah. We did a draft last night over at Sports Illustrated with, Jen Piacenti ran it. We had a conversation throughout that draft about players like, Rizzo.
Judge.
Aaron Judge.
And we don't even know. We don't even know, do we?
I don't know. I don't know all the players. Those are just two that I am aware of. Maybe Big John can speak on those two players and what would happen to other teams that are going to come up to Toronto. And something else I saw on social media, I'll look for it again while John's talking, was like players dressing in the parking lot and not joining the team in the clubhouse. Did you see that, Big John?
I don't think that was real. I'm not even paying that attention.
It better not have been real because I can't wrap my head around that kind of stuff.
No. Ignore the changing of the clothes. That we're not going down that road. And without getting political at all, I would just say I expected a little more consistency. I'm hoping reason will prevail. Like, that's what I'm hoping for. There's still time. And living in New York City, and again, this is non-political, really opinionated, just keeping it between the lines. We have been seeing mandates and restrictions lifted daily here. I mean, I'm just speaking from a parent with firsthand experience, having seen masks come off in school. Now they just the other day come off of the youngest children, and that had to do with vaccine stuff. So that's what I didn't want to talk about this stuff too much, but what I'm getting at is right now I'm actually not touching the Yankees whatsoever. I wouldn't even bet the Yankee over just in case, because these things are going to be decided right on the line. You can't touch Judge. You just can't draft these players, and if you lose on it, you lose on it. Remember, 160 games is a lot, but losing 9 is too many to sacrifice. You just can't sacrifice missing, even if it's 7 or 8% of your at-bats. It takes all the counting stats with it. Plus, it could cost you weeks in head-to-head and stuff. I'm not going to wish cast that common sense is going to prevail as much as I'd like it to. So right now, the answer is do your best to find out who is not vaccinated and just don't go down that road. Last thing is, if you do draft a player that ends up missing tons of time to stiff like this, it's going to frustrate you and give you agita nonstop. There's no point of going down that road. It's going to upset you and take a really fun experience, betting and fantasy baseball, and make it not fun. So I'm just not doing that.
Yankees under.
Yeah, listen, you can't lean over if all your best players. I thought I even heard DeGrom is on the Mets list, I think.
It's weird because we don't know, right? Like, you have these whispers, you have these rumors, and then the law could just be changed. And I mean, that's all we're really talking about here is, are they going to be on the field when we need them to be on the field, or for the win totals, for fantasy baseball, for player props, whatever it might be. And I could see stuff changing, but that doesn't mean that stuff doesn't change back in 3 months too. We've seen enough of this, right?
Absolutely right, Pat. That's a fantastic point that I think because everyone is so happy about the recent news, we're getting baseball, the grass is starting to come up, that, it could go the other way, and you could see these things instituted. Pat, you are super sharp. I don't think I've heard a single person really mention the reinstitution. Now, again, we cannot predict that, but it is something to think about and probably another reason to just avoid.
Yeah, it's just more unknown variables that could compound to something that could already go very poorly anyway. Now, I think from like a fantasy baseball perspective, everything could change next week and everything is glorious and there's no problems here. Then you get a steal on everyone. I mean, is that a case that people are making as well?
Well, it's happened a little bit, but players are really sharp nowadays. Someone is going to grab Aaron Judge, and I just live streamed a very high-stakes draft with all types of industry folk and high-stakes players alike tag teaming up, and I think he made it to the 5th round. So that's a 15-teamer, which is a nice discount, but don't expect him to fall much further than that. And I'm sorry, people, especially if Judge might miss all his home games, that's a big overprice, even if we're talking about pick 75.
Meaney, you got 40 seconds on the Orioles. Give me something positive about the Orioles.
Oh wow, Cedric Mullins, great player. Draft him. That's really it. I mean, I like Mountcastle as a player. I think I have him in a dynasty squad. I'm seeing the progression from him. He's got some pop in his bat. I do like him in that lineup when we're playing DFS. We'll talk about Baltimore as like the underpriced lineup who could rake with Mullins and Trey Mancini and maybe Mountcastle. Like those are the three guys I think that really stand out to me when it comes to Baltimore. But I think what Mullins did last year, I fully believe in everything that he did. I think he's a terrific ball player. I think the price is right from a fantasy standpoint. He can come at you with speed. He's got some pop in his bat. He was among the leaders, I believe, in hits at one moment, late down the stretch as well. So that's all I got for Baltimore. There's still going to be a team that we pick on in the DFS community. We're going to be picking on them in overs. I know Big John is a first five guy, right? We eliminate the bullpens on certain teams. This is a team that they will give up a lot of runs. Last year, they gave up more home runs and more runs than any team, really. I do believe. Don't quote me on that, but I know they were like bottom three in terms of giving up power. So it's going to be a team that we pick on. They're going to give up a lot of runs, and their win total, 62.5? I don't even know if they get there.
Yeah, John,
I would, if I'm leaning, it's an under.
Back when I used to do this full time and cover baseball, Big John, that I used to love targeting these teams over win totals because they seem superficially depressed that, it's hard to lose 100 games in baseball. It really is. Yeah. Not saying that they're not going to do it. They most definitely can from being 150 to 1 to win a division. Kind of leads you to believe they're not very good. But, I mean, you're basically betting an over-under and taking the under on 100 losses. It's a lot of losses.
It's so many losses. And to get even money on that, the problem is what I was mentioning at the open about the trajectory of the team and the few players that might get you to those 60, to the 63rd win that we need in September are the players that are going to get shipped out likely, right? Yeah. So it's hard. We're not sold they're going to win 63 games, but we need John Means and even like some of the ancillary pieces. Santander could get shipped. Now, any one of these guys could get shipped at any time, in particular the pitching. And to what Chris was mentioning before, what was super sharp about betting with Baltimore is applying the nuance of you don't bet the first five with Baltimore because the bullpen is so terrible. And that's the last point with the over, Pat. And that's where I struggle with it is relievers are the hot commodity at the trade deadline. If Wells or any of the guys pitching for Baltimore are any good at the break in the bullpen, they're going to be shipped off and no one is going to be there to even shut down the games that they're ahead late. And I've gone down that path. It can be really deflating. But yeah, I do agree. 100 games is hard to lose.
I just double checked. 5.99 ERA as a staff was by far the worst in the bigs. And the bullpen was right there too, nearly 6. Again, by far the worst. Who they bring in? Jordan Lyles, big contact guy, fly ball pitcher. Like it's not going to work out again at Baltimore. It's a lot to ask for, to 100 plus losses, but they lost 110 last year and their rotation of bullpen may be worse.
Yeah, and the division's improved. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, let's move to the AL Central. I saw someone posting spring training bets the other day, and there was like Guardians over something else. Like, who the hell are the Guardians? I thought they were talking about like USFL futures. I was like, oh no, that's Cleveland. This is how out of the loop I am on some of this stuff right now. Didn't realize the White Sox were so good. Minus 195 to win a division in baseball. Is that indicative, Meaney, about how good they are or how bad this division is?
Yeah, a little bit of both, Pat. A little bit of both for sure. I am a sucker for the White Sox. I won't jump on this price, though. There's no chance. But I like their win total at 91.5. I think that they can flirt with 100 wins. Last year, I thought that they were going to be a team that could do the same thing, but they had some injuries to start. Eloy Jimenez was hurt. He didn't really return to the lineup until the later part of the season. And then Luis Robert, too, was another guy that just wasn't fully healthy. But, man, when he was healthy, I don't want to put this on the kid, but I see a lot of Mike Trout in him, honestly. I see like a 5-tool player who's got a terrific bat. He's got some speed. He's going to be up near the top of the lineup. I love Tim Anderson. Jose Abreu is just a couple years removed from winning the AL MVP. He's a little bit older now, I think flirting with 36, but I still think he's got a great bat. Man, up and down that lineup, they have a lot to offer, and I like the rotation, and I think they have one of the best bullpens in the game, if not maybe the best. So this White Sox team should be favored to win the division. I would be shocked if they didn't make the playoffs. This team, the one thing with them is, can they get over that hump? They seem to make the playoffs the past couple of years, and then they're just bounced really early. But I like the additions over the past couple years. This team has been on the upswing, just like when we talked and led off the show with the Jays and the Mariners. A lot of these prospects that they've had over the past couple of years, we're starting to see them now. And I don't think we've seen the best of a guy like Jimenez or Roberts. So, Big John, I know you're not feeling the minus 195 or whatever they are for the division, but I do believe that this is a team that's going to flirt with 100 wins, and this division is pretty bad.
Well, yeah, I think you did a really good job kind of breaking down the division. So let's get into the pricing. So the White Sox are a much better example of what I mentioned with the Blue Jays earlier. If you like the White Sox, you're probably right. That 195 is not going to move against you until the second half of the season. There is no way that line begins to move into the 200 and 300s unless they would have to be running the table while the entire division fell flat in their face, when more realistically is the Twins, the Guardians, and the Tigers in particular are teams that have all improved, but people don't like. And it's like they're not as good as the Rays, but they have that same stigma, the bad team bias, right? And people don't bet on these teams. They immediately hear Detroit's bad. Cleveland's bad. Minnesota is bad. Minnesota made a bunch of really good moves. They're actually very deep in pitching that goes into the minors. They've got impact bullpen guys. They're not a doormat. So from a probabilistic standpoint, I like the Twins at 5-1, the pricing, because they could just be a game behind the White Sox 30 games in. They're just not. I think people are a little too wild with the disparity in teams and how it's going to play out. So I would circle the White Sox, looking to bet it if the line moved in my favor, because I do think you're right, and I do think they finish the job. But we don't know how the first 20 games are going to play out, and the future market's always moving. So I think there might be value opportunities depending on the outcomes. But how could you bet minus 200 right now? I can't do that.
And even to bet the minus 200, like I said, it's probably somewhat indicative of a little bit of column A of the White Sox are good. No one believes in the rest of these teams. But when you look at the American League outright odds to win, like the Astros, Jays, and Yankees are all favored above the White Sox. Like the White Sox are closer to the Rays than they are to the Yankees. I mean, they're pretty close to the Yankees, but like they're in that in between where, I don't know, like if they were really that good, wouldn't they be the favorites considering this price is essentially guaranteeing they make the playoffs?
It's a pretty good point.
I think a part of that is the worry, like Chris said, not necessarily that it's that, the teams can't do it. Not last year's team affects this year's team, but when you get into those short sets, people are looking at the big squads because of the big pitching matchups, and I'm not sure the public is quite caught on to what the White Sox might be throwing at you in a short set. It's Giolito, it's Cease. You could get Kopech game 3. There's not a spot for breathing room. So I like the White Sox making it and then being able to progress even further. So that's where I think the value is, Pat, what you just circled is right. So it doesn't really line up. I think you did another great job at the division price and the World Series price and the American League's pennant price, are not congruent. They are not in line. And if you do believe in the White Sox, leave that division price alone. Get on the pennant price for sure, because that 500, if they do jump off to a heavy lead, is going to come shrinking down fast.
Yeah, 5-1 to win the American League, 12-1 to win the World Series for the Chicago White Sox right now. I remember for years, like when the Rays were that like bottom feeder team, but they had all of this pitching and they went 5 deep in like the late aughts, early like tens or teens, I guess. It just seems really bizarre to call it that right now because it feels like it's 120 years ago, not 100 years ago when you start saying like the early teens. But John, aren't there certain teams out there that are a much better bet to make the playoffs, but once they get to the playoffs, it's like, oh yeah, your depth doesn't mean shit anymore. You need to have those studs at the top. Even for a while, the Phillies were like this until Hamels and Halladay and all those guys really got it together. But you knew throughout the course of the season, they went 5 deep. As long as no one got hurt, they were competitive to win every game. And over 162, that's really going to play out. In a 5-game series, not so much.
Yep, I think Boston is that example for me. Yeah. I just don't see it at the top end. And right now, Chris Sale, he has a rib. He's going to be out at least, a month. Then he's got to ramp back up. Now we're talking about a string of injuries. Yeah, I kind of like Houck and like Whitlock. These have been more Swiss Army knife kind of guys. These are not 7-inning, 10 strikeout pitchers just yet. I do think they both have bright futures, particularly Houck, I think, will be an impact starter next season. This year, Boston doesn't have what it takes to hash it out with man, even now, Toronto is going to throw Gaussman, and I believe Manoah is in that conversation. We might even want to put Houston in there. We don't know exactly what we're going to get from JV. And after that, that rotation is not quite what it once was, going back a couple years when you got Cole in that game, too.
How old is... Hold on.
Yeah.
When you say JV, you mean Justin Verlander, right?
Oh, Justin Verlander, yes.
What is he?
Still hanging around.
What is he, like 70 years old?
I think Verlander is 38. I mean, he's had more surgeries than innings thrown over the past 2 years. And it's funny, now people are talking about that, Pat, as if it's a good thing, because now it's, we're past the worrisome phase after TJ, and we're into the honeymoon phase where it's 18 months removed. I mean, he's had groin surgery. He's talked about having to adjust his delivery in order to make himself more sustainable. I don't know, man. The Astros are hanging their hat on them as a favorite. You ask me why I like the Mariners so much. It's the pitching in Houston, and it's the injury worries in LA that I think opened the door for a team like Seattle.
Meaney...
Yeah, Verlander just turned 39. Yikes.
Wow, he's 39.
Just
Wow.
like
I'm assuming he doesn't throw 103 anymore, wherever the hell he was throwing when the Tigers made that run, he was coming out of the bullpen. It was like, oh my God, who is this guy?
Yeah,
and now we're 20 years later.
Kate Hudson keeps you young, Pat. Kate Hudson will keep you young.
It did look like a few years ago he was absolutely done. But yeah, maybe Kate Upton gave him a little bit
Kate
of
Upton. See, I'm so bad with celebrities. Look at that. I swung and missed.
I mean, I'd probably be on Team Upton over Hudson in 2022 at this point as well. It's not almost we're not watching Almost Famous coming out in theaters anymore. But
I don't know what any of that is.
that's great. So the White Sox favorite, John, you said you like the Twins. Is there any other surprise team here, Meaney, that you think could make a bit of a run?
No, I don't think so. I really don't. Like, there's some teams that are on the upswing. Detroit, right? We were talking prospects earlier with the White Sox and the Jays and the Mariners. They have a couple. They're going to be a little bit more competitive this season. But that's it. I mean, Cleveland has kind of, like, there's talks about moving Jose Ramirez. Like, that's a guy that could maybe be shipped, and then maybe they're one of the worst teams in baseball. KC's... they got some, Bobby Witt, but is he going to come up and be a major difference maker where they're going to be a competitive team? I don't think so. The Twins are really interesting, and I do agree with what John said. Like, if you're looking for value here inside this division for a team to potentially make it or even get their win total, what's their win total here for Minnesota? 81.5? Like, I could see that. I could see them being a 500 baseball team. Yeah, they made a ton of moves in the offseason. Like, they signed Carlos Correa. Nobody saw that coming. They still have some power inside that lineup. If Byron Buxton can stay healthy, that's a huge if. But if he can give them 450 to 500 plate appearances atop the order, the lineup is going to score, and they're going to be competitive. Gary Sanchez got a lot of swing and miss, but he's got some pop in his bat. Same with Miguel Sano. There are some guys that can rake. I don't love their rotation. Like Sonny Gray, I don't know how much I'm really banking on him being okay. Dylan Bundy, like Pat, this is a team that if you're playing MLB The Show franchise,
you have like
the
2011 like hot prospect all-stars on this team.
Right, that's it.
Absolutely. Like it's a team that just straight up made a ton of moves, and most of them were trades, and it happened in like a 4 to 5 day span, Big John, where they were making Mitch Garver's go. We'll get Isaiah Connor-Falefa. No, he's gone too. Josh Donaldson is gone. So it is a much different lineup. Urshela, a former Yankee, in there as well. I think that they'll compete offensively.
They jumped 5 games in win total making those moves. People saw Donaldson out, Garver out, but look, they were pretty sharp. I think I like the Donaldson move, but they were pretty sharp. They've actually increased that win total, and I agree. I actually think even with the boost, I think a 500 team is in the cards. Good call.
All right. Do you have any other sleepers here? Because sometimes if these teams
I do.
If they're loaded up with prospects, sometimes those prospects just turn out to be really good a year in advance of when everyone thinks that they're really going to mature. And then usually what happens is that they suck the next year. That's usually what happens to these teams.
This year, and a lot of it is price driven, which again is at the center of successful betting, of course. But it's the Royals. Part of that, Pat, is what you mentioned. They have so much talent bubbling, and it's no longer under the surface anymore. Similar to what you said, right? It's right at the surface, and we don't know exactly when it's going to pop. Yes, the entire world is on to Bobby Witt Jr., as well they should be. He's phenomenal, but it's more than that. Kyle Isbell is an excellent player, and he is really showing off in spring training right now. If he takes that step forward, he's a beast that no one's talking about. Nick Prado at first base also. So like that is not only, oh, they have this prospect, it's a prospect right behind a weak spot in Carlos Santana. They keep running out that they could be talking about major upgrades on 1/3 of the diamond. I love the rotation. I actually think it's excellent. Don't get me wrong. I know they brought in Greinke. I actually think he's going to be doing a little more mentoring because the Royals might have the best young group of starters, maybe like outside the Marlins. They really are very good. Carlos Hernandez and Brady Singer and Daniel Lynch and Jackson Kowar, lots of touted prospects that a lot of people just I don't think are on yet. And Barlow and Stalmont in particular, I love Stalmont in the bullpen. I think the Royals are the best three-phase team at the bottom of the board. Yes, it's going to be incredibly difficult for them to win the pennant, but it's 70-1. Hey, man, 70-1. You really don't have to bet much to get a big payday.
Yeah, 74.5 is the over-under win total for the Royals. Now, does that feel like a really high variance one where it's like, oh, they lost 105 games, or oh man, they're like 87 and whatever the hell it equals out to? Like, are they that type of team this year?
Well, I think my answer to that, Pat, lies in my perception of their trajectory. I do not think they're sellers. So that if I end up like on the fence, that's how I decided. I think if anything, Kansas City is adding. If those prospects that I mentioned don't pan out, and they'll probably know by the All-Star break what they have in their hands, I think they're adding. I think Benintendi is in line to have a big year. I don't know. I kind of like the Royals, and in particular, we're talking about price moving. 70-1 is an absurd price. It could easily move to 55-1 in a blink with not much happening.
All right, let's move out west. Meanie, make the case for the Angels being the best team in baseball.
Well, they got arguably the best two players in baseball, right?
That's a start.
In Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout, so that's a start there. They clearly health has been an issue for them, obviously. But even over the past couple of years, not getting anything really from Ohtani, apart from last year, and Mike Trout being hurt the past couple of years, and getting really nothing from Anthony Rendon since he has signed there. This is a team that's still finished inside the top 10 in offense. They got a lot of guys who can rake. They got some kids. Joe Adell, hit one. I don't know if Big John saw that one out in the parking lot on the highway there last night. Oh,
he looks good.
He does look good. A small sample, but he looked good in September. Brendan Marsh as well. So you got the future outfield there with the two prospects with Mike Trout. If Rendon is healthy, I know he came out and was talking about his tape last year. He said, go back and look at my tape the past 2 years. My back foot wouldn't even move. Like, it wouldn't even get up. I had no rotation. This time last year, he was dealing with groin injuries and back injuries. He's kind of dealt with a lot of that over the past couple of years, but that's all I'll say. Like, again, I'll bring up MLB The Show. If you're playing MLB The Show and you're turning the injury settings off, this is going to be one of the best teams in baseball. They have a lot to offer offensively. If Trout can stay healthy, David Fletcher, if he's going to hit a top of the order, if he's going to hit in the 9 spot, he's one of the best contact guys in baseball. They're going to score runs. They bring in Noah Syndergaard. I don't know. Like, what's the expectations for Syndergaard? Can he get to 150 innings? If he got to 150 innings, I think that would be a surprise to everybody. And to me, if he could pitch 150 innings, then he's serviceable. But that is a huge ask. What I like, Big John, what the Angels finally did this season is they bolstered the bullpen. Yep. They got some arms. They were able to bring back Raisel Iglesias, Archie Bradley, Tepera. They finally have some, Andrew Loop, who is
Myers too looks
really good. Myers looked good. Yeah. Ty Buttrey, who just randomly, quote unquote, retired last year. He was dealing with some personal issues, and he is back now inside. Looks like he's going to have a spot inside the bullpen as well. So I think they're decent odds. Like, nobody wants to bet them because of the injuries, and they just say that. They said Mike Trout has made the playoffs once. That's it. Nobody's going to bet that. But at plus 400 for them, we just talked about the Astros being a little older and their rotation, so many question marks inside their rotation. I think it's decent odds considering what they have to offer. But Big John, you know it, and everyone's going to say it. It's health, and that's what it's going to come down to with this team. But I do believe they're a team that, go back to the win total. We talked about Minnesota being a 500 team. The Angels at 83.5. They get there. They've gotten to that number of, I think, maybe 7 of the past 10 seasons, getting really nothing outside the rotation of the bullpen. So I think that they are much better and more improved this year.
So the overall, John, the overall odds before you dump into it here and give us the value, it's minus 175 for the Astros, 4-1 for the Angels, 4.5-1 for the Mariners, 18-1 for the Rangers, 30-1 for the A's. The question before you jump in that I want to ask you are, how dependent are the Astros on health? Like, are they an injury or two away from just not being good anymore, or are they fine?
I mean, they kind of sound like the Angels a bit, where you're going to get mashed. The lineup is deep, both sides of the plate. They hit breaking stuff. They hit fastballs. The offense is very good. The bullpen in Houston might be a bit of a question now. Yeah, Presley is good, but it's what, Neris behind him. And the pitching staff we mentioned is they have a lot hung on the back of a 39-year-old with, again, not a ton after it. It's, Luis Garcia is nice, and Urquidy is a nice starter, and I guess Christian Javier is going to step in. They've already lost McCullers for the season, right? It sounds like I think his season's done. I guess I shouldn't cast it on him yet, but he's out for indefinitely, at least right now. Yeah, the Astros are hanging on by a thread. That's another perfect example, Pat, of the team bias and how public narratives drag the price. And like you mentioned, man, it's not the price is not necessarily reflecting the probability. It's a fulcrum, to keep the book balanced. That's all it is. Houston is a huge misprice here. I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. That's crazy.
Do we like any value in this division? Is it the Mariners? Is it the Angels? Or is it like, oh, yeah.
I would probably, because, again, the pricing, I think, is very weird in a probabilistic scenario. The Angels are 4-1 when they're probably the 1A. The Mariners are plus 450 when they're probably a 1B or a 2A. I would probably split my chips on the two of those. I don't see how one of them doesn't take the division down. I think the Astros, again, the offense is good. We're also hoping for a big bounce back from Bregman. He says he's healthy, but what's that? And they lost Correa. A lot of moves backwards for Houston. So from a value point, I think it's the Angels and the Mariners. But again, what Chris said, the health is everything. This rotation, I'm sorry, Chris. I root for the Angels because you root for the Angels, but it is put together with, I don't know what. Syndergaard, Lorenzen, even Sandoval had a stress fracture in his back. Man, they're hanging on by a thread. And then after that, it's Berrios, Berea, guys we really haven't seen in a while. I guess they're hanging on Reed Detmers, right? I guess you guys really like him, and he'll get some work, but asking a lot for them. I think with the pricing, Patty, I'm ended up on Seattle pretty much every time.
One thing I will say about when we're walking through this and win now teams, we're talking about teams that are selling. I do believe that the window right now, as crazy as it sounds, for the Angels to win, because again, they've only made the playoffs once under Mike Trout, is right now. Right now. So if Joe Adell continues to smash, or Brendan Marsh, these are pretty good prospects.
Yeah.
And there's some reports and some rumors that maybe they could trade one or two of these guys for, I don't know, Cincinnati selling everybody. Luis Castillo, maybe an arm. If they were to ship one of those prospects, and I do believe that they would entertain that idea, to ship one of those two guys to get a front end arm. Maybe it's a number 2 behind Shohei Ohtani. Who looks great to start spring.
That's a pretty good catch, man.
Then we're talking about them, right? Then we're talking about them being a little bit more competitive, having an ace inside that rotation. Yep. I think it's very, very possible because Rendon is older. Cool. Trout is getting older. You got Ohtani here under contract before he's going to get paid in a couple years. Jared Walsh had the big breakout season, which I do buy, and we'll see a little bit of regression in his bat, but he's got 30 home runs inside his bat. So yeah, we'll see. I think that's a team. And if that move happens, John, then we're looking at them as plus 250 or something like that.
Right, because then they can compete in those series. I just think because of all the betting we do around here, I tend to look at these things from that lens. Even with Michael Lorenzen, right, who's your number 2, he's going to be an underdog to the Astros and Urquidy, let's say. Even if it's a slight underdog, he's probably going to be the underdog. You need your number 2 to be the favorite almost anywhere he goes in the division, and that's not going to be the case, right? I may be targeting to go up against the Angels in those F5 with one of those guys in the hill going up against one of, an E-Rod in Detroit, let's say, or somebody like that, where people don't like the jersey. Yeah, I don't know, man. I definitely like that. If I were the Angels, I would try and move from strength into weakness and get a big SP2, and that's a big step up for them.
Let's move into the fun part of this. Future awards. I'm looking at the AL MVP right now. You mentioned it, Meaney. 2 Angels at the top. Ohtani's 3.5 to 1. Trout's 4 to 1. Vlad's 4 to 1. Judge is 16 to 1. That seems kind of trappy, doesn't it?
A Judge?
Yeah.
I don't know who would touch that. And this is the part of the conversation I've been waiting for, because last year here at the Mayo Media Network, we did okay at this portion of the show with the AL futures. Had a Shohei Ohtani 50 to 1, and Big John had a Vlad at like 60 to 1, who was runner up and was right there. And maybe if he won Triple Crown, he would have won the MVP. But I'm really looking forward to this conversation, Big John, because I don't know if Shohei set a precedent last year. Like, if he does anything similar this year to what he did last year, is he not just the AL MVP again? Like, if he hits 30-plus bombs, steals 10-plus bags, hits 260, has 150 strikeouts, wins 7 to 10 games, how is he not the MVP again? I just don't know if they were like, okay, we've never seen this before, let's give him the MVP. Because in my opinion, and not speaking from a guy who watched Angels games, looking outside at this, if he does what he did again or close to it, he's the MVP. Like, he's the most valuable player on the team.
Yeah, he's 2 most valuable players on a team almost. It was shocking. And again, from my betting lens, I break down these games every single day. And to watch his progression as a pitcher into the now like elite tier of pitching. So, I do a lot of trend work, but even if we're just looking at this season on a whole, so from a fantasy perspective, which I know is not a perfect translation, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good. He was the 6th best hitter and the 30th best pitcher. I mean, it's insane. That is insane to have the same person do that at the same time. Yeah, it's him by a country mile. It's amazing that there's a player like Vlad who hardly is not even part of the consideration because of how unique what Shohei offers is. And I guess if you're betting on anyone else, you're just betting on Shohei to get hurt. That's what it feels like right now.
We got to try to find some value here, Pat. But I mean, I don't want to come in here with the favorite, but I just don't understand how
fucking chomp donkey Chris Meaney. That's all you're doing. Oh, the favorite. Does the favorite ever lose? No, never.
I don't want to bet them. Big John's right. Like, an injury happens, clearly, and it could happen with him. It could be an arm. We've already seen it. He's had Tommy John. Like, I mean, fatigue could get in the way. Maybe they realize, like, okay, well, you can't do this. You can't be pitching and hitting all week. You got the Shohei rule now. He can come out of the game after he's done pitching, and he can go to DH. So maybe an injury does happen. We will try to find some value here, but
I would say,
lie.
To your original point, and maybe this doesn't persist as much in baseball because, I mean, everyone who votes on baseball is like 94 years old. So why would I change my vote? But we see it in the NBA from time to time that if you set this benchmark for yourself, winning it the second time is really tough because people feel exhausted by voting for you. We're seeing the same thing in the NBA right now where like Giannis, Jokic, and Embiid all are kind of hovering around having the same sort of numbers, but Giannis is for whatever reason like a double-digit underdog to win MVP because he's won 2. And people are just like, let's give it to someone else. And I realize he didn't win last year, but he has won those 2. Let's give it to someone else. And that would probably make like, although Jokic probably deserves it, you would have Embiid being like, I haven't won one yet. So they're like, let's give it to him. So if he doesn't live up to it, or even just, is right around that number, you might look at like, Vlad was second last year. Vlad posted around the same numbers this year, or maybe even a little bit better, which would probably be hard to do. That you just voters inherently, because they're people, and we're not basing this off any sort of metrics. The MVP can be interpreted in any way that a voter wants to see it. That there is a human element of this. I do believe that maybe you don't give it to Ohtani unless he surpasses what he's already done.
Yeah, I agree. And you bring up a really good point when it comes to the NBA, too. The NBA is totally known for that. It's no secret, right? I mean, LeBron should have won 3 in a row, and they gave it to Derrick Rose one year just because, right? It was a new player, a new up-and-coming player, and they didn't want to give it to the same guy. So I get that. I'm totally interested to see what these writers will do, though, again, just with Ohtani, and they were just seemed to be baffled on what he did, and if he could do it again, maybe it's exhausted after year 2 or year 3, but if we're looking for some value here on the board, I mean, you got the Jays, obviously, with Vlad at 4-1, Bichette at 20-1. I talked up Robert. I'd love to hear Big John. I mean, Luis Robert at 28-1. I think he's a tremendous bat. Obviously, it's a really good lineup, just like the Jays too, though, right? Like you can make a case for a lot of different Jays. Like maybe you can make a case for a lot of different White Sox here, but I think at 28-1, like this is a kid that I think could get off to a hot start. And I think maybe at the end of April, mid-May, he's sitting at like 12-1 or 10-1. He's only going to move up. We'll
yeah, agreed. And I think the two of you really touched on, I don't know the formula, right? And I think that's the point, is the most important point at the center of this is there's a subjective element to it. There really is. I don't know if the word is like sexy or popular, but it really is. There are just players who fit an MVP mold. And there are certain players that you feel like no matter what they did statistically could somehow fall short. I honestly don't know what it is, but I feel like that's part of the conversation. And I think Luis Robert fits that. So as much as for me, it's Ohtani by a country mile because it's so unique, Robert is one of the handful of guys that you could see doing it. I really think you need to be part of the big market and the big sexy team. I really do think that helps because the popularity and the energy around it feels like that's part of the decision-making because there's people behind it. Again, I don't know the exact formula because I'm unsure that there is one. But yeah, you got to be looking for big ticket names that have the ability to fly up the board. Chris, you nailed it. Lou Bob, absolutely one of those guys. And if not for the restrictions with Judge, I feel like he's one of those players. We've seen him improve his discipline even some and cut strikeouts while adding contact. We know the quality of contact for Judge is through the roof. He's a guy that could easily hit 60 home runs, but not if you're only playing 90 games. So I love the Lou Bob call because he checks all those boxes, Chris.
Sorry to jump in here, Pat. What do you think about Wander Franco? You're a big Tampa Bay guy. Is it 18-1 is a bit much just because he's the sexy name? Like if the Rays are the team that wins the division and they win 100 games this year, Franco, I mean, what he came on hot. He was great. Do you think there's any value at 18-1 with him? Big John?
Wait, I'm sorry. Say it again. I was
with Wander Franco? Do you think there's any value in Franco? Is
no,
he?
I don't think
because you're talking about big names, but you're also talking about on big teams.
I don't think there's any chance. And again, I think he will grow into precisely that. Man, I don't want to say archetype. Let's call it that could win it. I don't think the lack of experience. I also don't think that the stats are there. I've had this conversation in fantasy quite a few times. I think he's a brilliant player, and I think he's probably the most coveted asset, maybe next to Juan Soto in dynasty leagues, but I don't think the maturation is there yet. I don't think the homers and the speed are there that you need to win an MVP nowadays. Meaning I think offensively, I think you got to hit 35 homers right now.
Sure,
you know, I don't think you could bat, even if he hit, let's give him the top outcome and he hits 325. I don't think you could win it with 16 homers, even if you stole 22 bases. You know, I don't think that's enough to do it. I don't think the appeal is there. And that goes back to what we mentioned with the team bias, unfortunately. The same narrative and public perception that suppresses the price, I think suppresses his chance at winning the MVP.
AL Cy Young, Garrett Cole is the favorite at the moment. Less than half of the odds of Shane Bieber. So it's plus 425, 7-1 for the Biebs. Robbie Ray, who wants to know, 9-1. Giolito's at 11-1. I mean, I'm starting to look at some of these. Nathan Eovaldi's on this list.
Ridiculous.
He's 25-1. Like that seems super short, doesn't it?
Yeah, not for me, Big John. I don't know for you, Nate Eovaldi. I mean, he's probably the Red Sox best pitcher if Chris Sale can't stay healthy. But, I mean, no way. I'd rather take a longer shot on Michael Kopech at 30-1 as a guy that is probably just going to pitch out of the pen, but maybe midway through the season he's inside that rotation. Casey Mize potentially. It's so tough to call a long shot for the Cy Young, is it not, Big John? Like these guys
Yep.
down the road here, like a Scooble, like he's just not going to be consistent. Erod is, moves to Detroit. It's a little bit of a friendly pitcher park for him, maybe less competition, softer opponents potentially, but you really have to look at the top of the board to try to find some value. And I don't know, man, there's not a lot of guys that really jump out to me. Shane McClanahan is a name that I would maybe sprinkle, but 16-1 I don't think is fantastic either, John.
Yeah, you nailed it with, and it's funny because we just had one happen. So I don't hope that's not too contradictory. We just kind of had a long shot win the Cy Young. But I think you got to be at the top of the board here. It goes, I'm not going to make the same exact argument about the narrative, but I believe that there's an archetype that I think you have to fulfill. Believe it or not, I actually like the Eovaldi pick. I am
really
behind Eovaldi this year because he has this injury-prone label now where everyone has to define their own, term. So for me, if you have 30 starts, you're not injured. For me, you're healthy, and you finish the season strong. So for me, you have all these all systems go. It's wheels up. He goes deep into games. He has strikeout potential. The division is going to suppress his chances, but I think it's reflected in the price. So I think it's at least realistic that he's on a really good team. He's the frontline starter. He's in line for 33 starts and has all those things that I was talking about. Other than that, there's not much there. For me, it's probably Giolito. Maybe that's where I like to look. For me, the answer is not normally in the top of the board because I would refer back to what I mentioned about the odds moving. Garrett Cole, the odds just not there. You might as well wait and see what happens a couple starts in. Even if it moves against you, I don't think it can move that much. And then at least you'll get to see that he looks really sharp because the one place that price can go is against you, right? A couple bad starts, all of a sudden – 3 starts is 10% of your season, and 10% of your season that isn't perfect, really. This is what stung Giolito a couple of years ago. So I think he checks the boxes, too. He has a Cy Young already under the belt. He's got the narrative. He's got the team. He's got the offense behind him to get him the wins, which probably shouldn't matter, but they do. So I think Giolito is probably my guy there.
Is the Cy Young something better to bet in season once you can kind of get an
100%.
understanding of their underlying numbers? Like, this guy is going to at least, his numbers right now, I don't know what people are using in the advanced stat community these days, John, but back in the day, when old dinosaur Pat Mayo was writing about analytics in baseball, I'd be looking at FIP versus XFIP versus batting average of balls in play. I know you guys are using swinging strike rate and a whole bunch of fancy new ones I don't even know about anymore, but does that give you an edge in some of these markets that you can find these guys oh my god, this guy should be the best pitcher in the league, he's not at the moment, this is going to turn for him?
For me, I would go by the board. So pitchers at the very top, even if I've identified them as partly a value, I don't think it hurts you to wait and see because of the risk reward, right? That disproportionate move you can have to the downside. Whereas if I've identified somebody at the back of the board, like if Chris really likes McClanahan, if he comes out and his first 3 starts are 7 innings, 10 Ks, that odd is going to get cut in half. So I would be looking at the point on the seesaw they're at, right, where that center point is and where the price can move. So bottom of the board, take your position now. And the top of the board, I'd probably be more patient.
Pat, you're right, though.
Go ahead.
You're right, though, because this last year we saw it with Corbin Burns. Corbin Burns wasn't at the top of the board. Big John, we didn't even mention him when we were looking at NL MVPs. I had a future in, I believe, midway through the season at 25-1 when he was still one of the better pitchers in baseball at that time. There was some concerns whether he could last a full season. This was the most he had ever pitched. How would his arm shape up heading into September and August? Would they go to a 6-man rotation? Would they skip him? At times they did, but his numbers were electric. So I think it's very important if you want to get into this market. Sure, we're talking about big names here. I love the Giolito call at 11-1. I think there's some value there, but you definitely want to keep an eye on the first 4 to 6 weeks of the season to see which pitchers are really maybe some new pitches that we just overlooked. Corbin Burns, Freddie Peralta. They're 2 Milwaukee guys, but these guys came out of nowhere and they were top 10 pitchers in the bigs with terrific odds, even 10 to 15 starts into last season. So keep an eye on the first few weeks of the season, and there probably will be some value in guys that are. I looked at Alek Manoah. I looked at Alek Manoah. I don't think he's going to win Cy Young, but I wouldn't mind sprinkling a couple bucks if he was 80-1 or 90-1. I'm not finding him anywhere. I think he's the most valuable Blue Jays pitcher inside that rotation. I think he's got a lot of swing and miss. You're talking about swinging strike percentage. I think he's got that on the resume as well. Like, that's a guy that I think, come mid-May, we're like, wow, Alek Manoah, this guy's 5-0, getting the run support. He's got a double-digit strikeout percentage, K per 9. He's not walking a lot of guys. That could be the issue, but he could pop up on the board. And when he does pop up on the board, he's not going to be favored. He's probably going to be like 50-1. And there's going to be value there.
Yeah, I'm probably going to be looking a little bit before that. My worry with especially popular players and very good teams like Manoah, 5-0, I think everyone's on it. And I want to be if I could be a little bit sooner, and I'm gonna go to Pat's question, which was, is there stuff that we're going to be looking for? For me, definitively, yes. With some of the improvements I've made to my own game and pitching analysis, outside of even just something like velocity, I'm going to be looking for some shape.
Oh no, John froze. That's never good. Now he's
shape.
got
Look at that shape.
Now look at that shape up on the screen. Sorry, John. That's
things that will show up in Savant that are not really reported anywhere. We might see velo, but people are not really talking about increased tail or flattening their vertical attack angle, I should say, and those kind of things that we might notice. You mentioned pitch mix, so we start seeing a new slider right out the gate. A really good pitcher with a brand new slider is something we want to identify.
Yeah, and you can always increase your tail if you just lose 15 pounds, and that number's going to go way up. Trust me on that one.
Maybe more than 15.
AL Rookie of the Year. I mean, I don't know who any of these guys are. I mean, you're the one running the baseball segment of our League of Leagues team here. Someone named Bobby Witt Jr. is the favorite. He sounds like a NASCAR driver, so that's great. He's plus 330. Spencer Torkelson is 4.5-1. Is Rookie of the Year just an absolute crapshoot because it depends on playing time for one thing, and then you don't even know which guys are going to get called up super early on in the season. If Kansas City has a whole bunch of these guys, wouldn't it be like, oh yeah, this guy all of a sudden is going to play from the second week of April on, and he hits 38 home runs, he's the MVP? Or he's the Rookie of the Year, sorry?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I mean, there's a lot of intriguing names on here. I mean, Isbell was brought up by Big John. I like Tristan Cassis as a player, but the Red Sox probably don't bring him up just yet. I would imagine he's maybe a mid to late season call-up. I mean, Bobby Witt Jr., we were expecting him last year. Certainly I was. At one moment, I thought maybe we would see him in the bigs, but I mean, hot start. I saw a big bomb from him yesterday. The swing looks absolutely phenomenal. Again, chalk donkey Meaney here coming in. If I'm betting here, it's probably him or Julio Rodriguez. Those are the two guys. Number one prospect in baseball for Seattle, plus 750. John's talking up Seattle. I like the pitching that they have in some of their bats, but some of the guys that they brought in, I think, we could see them, in 6 months, how much of a role is Suarez going to have if he's batting $115 or things like that. You could find maybe these prospects like Rodriguez get up a lot quicker. Shane Baz was somebody I was interested in too, but he's got some issues right now, right, Big John, in his arm?
Yeah,
so I think he's a red flag.
A cleanup procedure they're saying is not structural.
It's a red flag for me.
But again, it's tough. It's absolutely a red flag. Plus, we know Tampa Bay has wonky usage issues.
Exactly.
They're very deep and they don't mind being very fluid. So you can't really expect him to be on time with 5 or 6 inning starts, which with Pat said, absolutely number one part of Rookie of the Year is playing time. That's number one. So American League, mine, it might be a little, I don't know if it depends, I guess, what circles you run in. I'm going with Riley Green. That's my guy. I'm going to go with Riley Green to win the Rookie of the Year. He's on a Tiger team where he's not the most popular prospect even. Torkelson is kind of getting the love. I think Green might be the more major league ready. He does a lot of balance. He was one of, I think, only 3 players in all of the minor leagues to have 25 home runs with 15 steals and a 300 batting average. The Big Daddy loves that, especially in Roto. I have him on every single squad. I think he's being undersung. The whispers were he's going to start opening day with the big club. There's the check box for Pat, just to give him the chance to compile it. And again, I think the skills are there. So opportunity plus skill plus odds. Give me Riley Green. That's my move this year. Big James Anderson guy as well.
Riley Green 12-1 to win AL Rookie of the Year at the moment. All right, we got to go rapid fire here to get everyone out. And of course, we'll be back for the National League breakdown in a week's time. So I just want names here. No odds attached to it. Meaney, you're up first. The 3 division winners.
Okay. White Sox, Jays, Angels.
John.
Pick.
John.
Yeah, see, I'm going off the beaten path. White Sox, Tampa Bay Rays, and Seattle Mariners.
Okay. Give me who's it going to be in the ALCS meeting?
White Sox. White Sox are the team this year.
White Sox over.
Don't shake your head, John.
I put the Rays in the World Series every year, so I'm like, I don't know how not to. So I have a Rays and Mariners World Series brewing.
You have say that again. You have a Rays Mariners World Series pick. I don't think that's going to work.
I'm sorry, Rays and Mariners pennant. I'm sorry, you asked the pennant. I gave you the World Series. The pennant is going to be Rays and Mariners for the AL pennant.
That sounds like the lowest rating ALCS of all time.
Well, not only that, I think I'm going to have to look for some books actually post the exact matchups. The odds for that got to be out of this world. I got to look for that.
Yeah.
One.
All right, well, let's do a quick bets recap here. John, you said you found some value. You're in on some stuff already at DraftKingsSportsbook.com. What should we be looking at here? It sounds like that Mariners to make the playoffs plus 165 is one that you love.
Yeah, I mean, you'll find once I identify teams, I try not to get too cute. I determine how much I want to bet on that team, and then I would just divvy it up. So you're going to find I pretty much like the Rays throughout. I pretty much like the Mariners throughout, right? They're for all the same reasons that we spoke about. You're getting plus odds. And then I'm just going to, divvy up my chips and kind of let the horses run on the teams that I like with value.
Where are your futures monies lying, Chris Meaney?
Well, I got some win totals here for you that I like. I kind of just mentioned them throughout the show, but I like what Big John was saying with KC, 74.5. I like Minnesota over 81.5. I think the White Sox are a 95-100 win team. 91.5 is something that they had topped last year with a lot of injuries. I like the bullpen. 91.5, I'm taking the over there. The over on LA and Seattle, 83.5 for each of them. And an under here, Oakland, 70.5. I would do this now. Oakland has sold everything. Matt Olson gone. Chapman gone. They're not done. They're going to continue to sell certain guys. Sean Manaea could be next to go. Frankie Montas could be next to go. This is going to be, I know that they're always a team that hangs around, and we always say, how do they find a way to hang around? Moneyball, there's this, there's that, there's a pile of 50 feet of crap, and then there's the A's. I don't know. I butchered that money ball line, but this is a team that is going to be one of the worst in the American League. We were talking about Baltimore, and it's tough to take the under on 60 wins, but this one here, 70.5, that's probably one of my favorite bets on the board.
I love it.
I really like a few of those. I like the ones in the middle, the ones like the Kansas City, 500, Minnesota. Yeah. Just looking to be a 500 team. Right? Baseball is played around 500. And I think that's where the overreactions are found. That's a great job, Chris.
All right, that will do it on the American League preview for the Pat Mayo experience. As John had mentioned a little bit earlier, check out fantasy football. Check out fantasy baseball picks and bets powered by Cork Stats on the Mayo Media Network. You can find all of John's stuff up at theathletic.com and follow him on Twitter at MLB Moving Averages. Chris Meaney, of course, you can follow on Twitter at Chris Meaney. You got that verified check right next to his name because he's not some scrub like myself. But you can check him on Mean Streets every single day, podcast or on YouTube, and over at FTN Daily and FTNBets.com. That will do it for me. Remember to rate and review the show, smash a like on the way out, and sub to the channel. Share it around if you liked it as well. Tell some friends. That always helps. I'm Pat Mayo. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!